Good evening, and thank you for joining us from the boardroom for tonight's Vaping Prevention Town Hall. My name is Rob Spicker. I'm with the Communications Department for the school district, and soon I'm going to be introducing you to our prevention specialists, Sarah Thompson and Kathy Wynn, who will lead our presentation tonight. The FDA, more than a year ago, declared that the country had a vaping epidemic. Just last week, the CDC advised all of its users, all e-cigarette users, to refrain from e-cigarettes while it investigates a national outbreak of lung injuries. And just today, Florida reported its second vaping death. Lee County is not immune to this national trend, and we hope our presentation tonight can explain what makes tobacco and vaping so dangerous for your teenagers, the signs that may indicate your child is vaping, and the consequences of teen nicotine use. After the presentation, we're going to be taking your questions, in fact, during it as well. So post the questions you have about vaping and nicotine underneath this video presentation as part of the comments section, or send us an email to an email address created just for this event, vapingprevention@leeschools.net. We'll be answering your questions during and after this presentation. Right now, let me turn things over to our prevention specialists, Sarah Thompson and Kathy Wynn, for tonight's presentation. Ladies.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you for joining us. As Rob said, on September 12, 2018, the Food and Drug Administration declared that youth e-cigarette use was an epidemic, and that the biggest trend in youth e-cigarette use is the cartridge-based e-cigarettes like the JUUL. While teen cigarette use has decreased, teen e-cigarette use has increased. Every year, Florida surveys over 54,000 middle and high school students about substance abuse. In 2018, both Lee County students reported past 30-day and lifetime cigarette use rates were less than the state average. However, their reported e-cigarette rates for each of these were higher than the state average. Notice that Lee County teens reported past 30-day e-cigarette or vape use is 10 times higher than their reported past 30-day cigarette use. 34.3% of Lee County middle and high school students reported having vaped at least once, and 18.3% reported that they had vaped in the past 30 days, which is a predictor of regular use. Now some better news. According to the 2019 Florida Youth Survey, the percentage of Florida middle and high school students who reported either vaping sometime in their life or in the past 30 days was less than it was in 2018. Reported lifetime vaping went down 13.3%, and reported past 30-day vaping went down 8.8%. The term vape is very misleading. Many people think that e-cigarettes emit a harmless water vapor, but water vapor evaporates, leaving nothing behind. However, this is not true of e-cigarettes. They emit an aerosol that contains many different chemicals and leaves particles behind. This is a list of 67 chemicals. All of these chemicals have been found in e-cigarette aerosol. The 30 chemicals in orange have been found to be harmful to humans. Here are some of the other places where these chemicals can be found. So propylene glycol is found in antifreeze. Acetone is an ingredient in nail polish remover. Ethylbenzene is found in pesticides. Formaldehyde is an ingredient in embalming fluid. Nicotine, of course, is found in cigarettes. And rubidium is an ingredient that's found in fireworks. Flavors hook kids. This is one brand of e-liquid, which is sometimes called e-juice, to demonstrate how the vaping industry created sweet-tasting flavors that appeal to young people. There are more than 15,000 e-liquid flavors as of last year. The most popular e-cigarettes are the cartridge-based ones like the JUUL. JUUL held nearly 3/4 of the e-cigarette market as of July 2019. This video will give you some more information on how e-cigarettes, including JUULs, are affecting our young people.
Unfortunately, there's been a huge increase of JUULing. not just in the high schools, but down into the middle schools, into young kids. One of the things we see from the news stories coming out is that these companies have been specifically targeting young kids, investing money in young kids, knowing that they can get them addicted to something that is going to be a lifelong income flow for them. Right now, we were seeing a real drop-off in youth smoking, but now we're seeing an increase. That increase was someone who was not using nicotine, and now they are. And we know that for young people, that use of the JUUL predisposes you to cigarette smoking later on. The nicotine is a pesticide. It's a pesticide that the tobacco plant uses to kill insects. So what we do is we take that pesticide, it works through altering your nervous system, which is how it kills insects, and we've used it, refined it, concentrated it, and now we have a pure form of one of the most addictive substances known. It's sold as something that's, safer or sort of an alternative to smoking. What it actually is a fantastic device for injecting your kid with an addictive pesticide that can set up a lifetime habit of addiction. There's a wide perception that somehow these are not dangerous or safer. And I'll just tell you the answer to that. They are not safe, they addict you. So one critical step in our state, Washington State, we just passed a law to increase the purchase age for tobacco and JUUL products to 21. So that is a huge and important step. Theoretically, that will help to get it out of the high schools.
Florida's Senate Bill 1618 was proposed to raise the age for tobacco-related sales from 18 to 21, but it failed to pass in May of 2019. In a November 2018 survey, 63% of JUUL users did not know that all of the JUUL products contain nicotine. According to the manufacturer, a JUUL 5% nicotine pod contains the same amount of nicotine as a regular pack of 20 cigarettes. It equals 59 milligrams per milliliters, and their 3% pod equals 35 milligrams per milliliter. To put this in perspective, the maximum nicotine content allowed for tobacco products in the European Union is 20 milligrams per milliliter. Both JUUL pod types are not legal in the European Union. This chart shows that as the number of U.S. middle and high school students who reported using e-cigarettes increased from 2017 to 2019, JUUL's revenue grew, even though not all e-cigarettes used are the JUUL brand. Please note that the 2019 revenue data for JUUL is projected by Bloomberg.com. The vaping industry's own American E-Liquid Manufacturing Standards Association requires that nicotine content be within 10% of the labeled content. Researchers, however, found that over 60% of the e-cigarettes they bought had nicotine levels either higher or lower than the label indicated. Some samples had as much as 840 times more nicotine than the label stated. Inaccurate labeling makes it hard to know just how much nicotine you are actually getting. More people are dependent on nicotine than any other chemical substance. Nicotine is as addictive as heroin, cocaine, and alcohol. The human brain isn't completely developed until around the age 25. Since the reward system in a teen's brain isn't fully mature, they are more vulnerable to becoming addicted to nicotine. Nicotine slows the development of teens' brains, which can affect memory, concentration, learning, self-control, attention, and mood. Nicotine can also prime the adolescent's brain for addiction to other drugs. According to the Surgeon General, teenagers who smoke are 3 times more likely to use alcohol, 8 times more likely to use marijuana, and 22 times more likely to use cocaine. A 2011 study by the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse found that 90% of Americans with substance use disorders began using alcohol or other drugs before age 18. In the same study, only 4% of substance abusers or addicts reported that they began using after the age of 21. The earlier an individual starts smoking, drinking, or using other drugs, the greater the likelihood of addiction. Here are some signs that your teen may be vaping. If their room or clothes smell artificially sweet, don't just assume it's candles or lotions or perfumes. A common chemical in e-liquid, propylene glycol, is a dehydrating chemical, and it can cause nosebleeds, bloodshot eyes, and increased thirst. And since nicotine is a stimulant and spikes your adrenaline, they may reduce their caffeine intake and start turning down coffee and sodas. The CDC and other public health organizations are investigating a national outbreak of e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury. As of last week, 2,291 hospitalizations and 48 deaths have been linked to this. The numbers continue to rise around the country. According to the CDC, 77% of the victims are under 35 years old. 83% reported using THC products, but 13% reported using only nicotine products. Please watch this video about a Michigan teenager who recently had a double lung transplant due to severe lung injury caused by vaping.
A Michigan teenager is recovering tonight after a rare double lung transplant, and we're going to show you what his lungs looked like. He is one of more than 2,000 Americans who have been treated for lung damage blamed on vaping. At least 40 have died. As Dean Reynolds reports, the boy wishes to remain anonymous but wants his story told.
When this 16-year-old boy was transferred to Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit last month, he was very near death. He had been vaping, his parents said. He was non-responsive, his lungs were horribly inflamed and filling with fluids and dead tissue. He had been to 2 hospitals before coming to Henry Ford. Doctors had placed the boy on what's called an ECMO machine, which breathed for him, but still he deteriorated. The only thing that could save him was a double lung transplant.
This is an evil that I haven't faced before. It was worse than my expectation.
Dr. Hassan Nemi led the surgical team on October 15th in the 6-hour operation, believed to be the first double lung transplant for a victim of vaping. This picture shows him holding one of the boy's destroyed lungs.
You had never seen lungs in that condition before, is that right?
I've seen lungs in bad conditions, but this is by far the worst.
Officials won't say what the boy was vaping when he fell ill, but Dr. Nemi and his team say he is now recovering and breathing with his new lungs. He can eat and talk and take a few steps. And Nora, he recently celebrated his 17th birthday here at the hospital.
Quite a story, Dean. Thank you.
Oh, why is it at the card slide? What happened?
All right. So, the CDC has identified vitamin acetate as a chemical of concern. Recent testing of lung fluid samples collected from 29 patients found vitamin E acetate in all the samples. The CDC recommends not to buy vaping products from unreliable sources or online. VAPRWARE is a product line designed to help users hide their vaping devices. They advertise that you can vape anything, vape anytime. So parents, you need to be on the lookout for these products. Vape watches came out earlier this year and are also on the market to help users discreetly vape. Some resemble a smartwatch, but the watch face is a vaping device that pops off for use. The school district, the students at the school district of Lee County are expected to be smoke and vape-free during the school day. A nicotine and tobacco prevention lesson may be required if a student is found vaping or smoking on school campus. Now we're going to discuss vaping marijuana concentrates, which are also known as THC extraction, dab, butane hash oil, as well as many other names. Marijuana concentrates contain extraordinarily high THC levels that can range from 40 to 80%, as opposed to the THC levels found in traditional plant-based cannabis, which is about 14 to 15%. This higher level of THC can create a more intense psychological and physical reaction. Vaping marijuana concentrates, called dabbing, is often preferred because it's smokeless, odorless, and easy to conceal. This chart shows the average THC content in confiscated marijuana. In the 1990s, the average THC content was roughly 3.7%. In 2013, the average THC content was about 9.6%. Now, with the growing popularity of marijuana concentrates, the average THC level of confiscated marijuana is around 50%, with some samples exceeding 80%. For a person new to using marijuana, the high THC levels increase the chance of a harmful reaction. According to a national survey called Monitoring the Future, all grades surveyed reported an increase of marijuana vaping from 2017 to 2018. We in Lee County recently received the Florida Youth Survey data. And so for the state of Florida, some of the statistics are alarming. We see a significant difference in reported use among surveyed grades when compared to national statistics. Since there is virtually no data on therapies to treat kids who are addicted to nicotine, medical experts say there's an urgent need for research. Anyone who believes they need help to quit nicotine should consult a medical professional. Here are a list of resources on the topics of vaping and other prevention topics for parents.
We'll keep this slide up for a few so that you can copy these resources down if you choose to.
And please feel free to send any questions you have now. Have we gotten any questions?
We do, in fact. Yes, about our first question is about the resources that are available from a mother saying that her daughter is addicted, 15, and addicted to vaping. And so she's wondering what kind of affordable resources she has available to her to help her daughter and to help anybody else that might be at that age already addicted to vaping.
Well, if they believe their child already has developed an addiction, we strongly recommend they talk to their family physician so that they can give them the right guidance. This becomes a medical situation.
Another question that was emailed into us asks, why were not e-cigarettes more regulated when they first came out?
We have the paper.
Well, prior to the enactment of the 2009 Tobacco Control Act, the FDA historically took the position that any non-tobacco product with added nicotine was a drug, even when marketed for recreational use, and without specific claims of smoking cessation or other therapeutic benefit. So they were regulated under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. So in other words, it was considered a therapeutic device. So it did not follow under the traditional tobacco restrictions. That's how.
Yeah, that's kind of when the gate got opened, so to speak, because having it not be regulated at that time, we missed a lot of the signs, I think.
So get us to where we are today.
Yep.
We had another question that came in through our email as well, which asked, what are the approved nicotine replacement products that can help you quit if you've become addicted to the nicotine in the vapes and the e-cigarettes? So what's out there to help you replace the nicotine?
Well, they do have over-the-counter nicotine patches and gums and lozenges, prescription nicotine patches, inhalers, nasal sprays. But if it is a minor we're dealing with, they really need to seek help from a medical professional. And if the medical professional believes this is the right route to take, they will help them out. But there are therapies out there for people who are addicted to nicotine. But the medical professional is the person to go to.
That's mostly because it's known that nicotine is bad for teens, and so those remedies were for adults who are addicted to nicotine. And so to give a teen nicotine to help them get off nicotine, we know that, nicotine cessation is to try to reduce the amount of nicotine, slowly to wean them off it, so to speak. But because there's no known, as we said in the earlier slide, there isn't a known therapy or nicotine therapy for teens. So they're having to figure this out as we go, unfortunately.
These different products, replacement products, have not been tested on the young person. And their minds are different, their bodies are different than an adult, so they may react very differently. And so they haven't gone through the testing. This has really kind of caught us by surprise.
Yeah, we do really seem to be at the very beginning of this epidemic as opposed to towards the middle or the end, and trying to figure it out now as we go through it.
Mm-hmm. It's important to note that e-cigarettes were never approved as a smoking cessation device. So they're not on the list of smoking cessation therapies, like the patches, like the lozenges, the gum, those type of things, the inhalers. So you will not find e-cigarettes on the approved FDA, American Lung Association, American Cancer Society. Nobody ever approved e-cigarettes as a smoking cessation device.
The American Lung Association, their research showed that most individuals who try to use electronic cigarettes to stop smoking end up becoming dual users. So they use both e-cigarettes and regular traditional cigarettes. Earlier in the presentation, Kathy had talked about how unreliable nicotine labeling is. So if you're trying to quit a nicotine addiction, you want to slowly start reducing how much nicotine you're putting into your body and wean yourself off. But if the nicotine liquids that you're vaping are unreliable, you may not be doing that. One time you may get a liquid that is much higher in nicotine than it advertises, and next time much lower, and you can't regulate.
Well, we'd encourage you still, while we have a few minutes left, if you have a question, go ahead and post it right in our comment section or send an email to vapingprevention@leeschools.net, and we can get Sarah and Kathy to answer that question for you. What do you think would be the main takeaway, or what do you hope is a main takeaway for any parent out there watching right now and wondering, is my child vaping? What do I need to look for? What do you want them to know the most? What do you want them to leave with?
I would say talk to your child. So find out what they know about vaping. Do they have friends that vape? And then you're going to have to be educated so you can sort of, debunk the myths that they may have about it, which is it's harmless water vapor, it's just flavoring, those type of things that we hear over and over again. It's not a big deal. Why are you making a big deal about it? And so you need to have the education and then have the open discussion with your child. And it's very important not to react in anger, or if your child is vaping, and especially if they're addicted to nicotine, they're going to need help. And so they need to go, as Sarah suggested earlier, to seek medical advice, because we don't expect people who've been smoking cigarettes for years to just quit cold turkey without having some side effects, and we certainly can't expect that of our children. So they will need some type of therapy. Nicotine therapy. There are medications that, again, for adults, we know that it can help with nicotine cessation, but again, those are not proven for children. While we're here, I'm going to go ahead and put up our upcoming parent presentations. And so every month, we do parent presentations on different topics, and we do one in each zone here at the district. And in January, we will be covering the topic of marijuana, and then we're going to do nicotine, tobacco, and vaping again in February because it is such a hot topic.
And
so,
not only do you often take this information to parents as we are now or through those presentations, but this information is available to our schools, to our students, and it's presented to them there as well, is it not? Can you explain what we're doing in the schools?
We, Kathy and I have developed presentations for students that are shared with schools when they have requested. We have been asked to come out and speak to student groups at different times. And we will do presentations on not just tobacco and vaping, but other subjects that we also have. We can also, these resources that we have can be used by the schools to give the presentations to the students on their own.
We do have at least a couple comments, one being thanked, but also suggesting, what would we rather that the child be smoking cigarettes? And they're really not an alternative, or how would you address that?
I would address it. I wouldn't want them to smoke either. So they're both not good. So I sometimes, with students say, well, they're better than cigarettes. And I've heard somebody explain it in the way that if you fell off of a 10-story building, that's really bad. An 8-story building's not as high as a 10-story building, but if you fall off that, that's really bad too. So in other words, whether it's better or worse, and I would say, right now we are just getting more and more information about these chemicals and the effect the chemicals are having on people's lungs. And so it took decades before we knew about tobacco and, the big tobacco and all that. And so we're just now starting to, get enough information to know that this is not good. We do not want to go down this path again.
While we wait for more questions to come in, we can take your questions through the website, through our Facebook, through the Vaping Prevention at leeschools.net email, and continue to answer those for you tomorrow. Any last thoughts as we go?
One thing is the lungs were designed for air. So whether it's traditional cigarette smoke, marijuana smoke, or any type of vaping device, the lungs were designed for air, not for these other things. And with the tobacco, it took many, many years before we started seeing the negative effects of it. We're actually seeing negative effects of vaping in a much quicker period, much sooner. This has really taken on in the last few years, and we've had a number of deaths and serious illnesses just since, over the last few years.
Well, we do encourage you to continue to send emails with your questions to vapingprevention@leeschools.net. We can always get those forward to both Sarah and Kathy so that they could be answered for you. This is an epidemic that we hope through our education efforts to our students and to parents and family and friends at home that we can continue to eat away at and knock down. So we thank you for being with us tonight. Sarah and Kathy, thank you so much for your time and all your information and your helpful answers. Send your questions to us. We appreciate you being here, and have a safe, good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.